All right, now we're going to move on to still talking about morale. We're going to hear from Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery. If you don't know who that is, Monty. World War I, the Anglo-Irish War, the Palestine conflicts, uprisings, and World War II. He obviously ran the British 8th Army, World War II. So we've got a person with some very solid perspective on leadership and combat leadership, the quality of morale. Back to the book. In war, the moral stature of some men increases, and their characters grow stronger and more closely knit in proportion to the discomforts and dangers they are called upon to face. Boom. So some guys get better. Some guys rise to the occasion. Back to the book. Such men will occasionally perform in battle remarkable acts of selfless courage and daring, and will endure with extraordinary fortitude and patience the burdens thrust upon them. Other men, however, will, under the stress of hardships or dangers, surrender to fear or fatigue and allow their characters to disintegrate. This disintegration will usually take the form of a loosening of the moral fiber, which results in timidity of action and slackness in appearance, while those who have gone to seed will be dirty and their appearance will be sluggish and will be slovenly. In these later cases, there has been a general loosening of character due to partial surrender to fear. So I totally agree with this. You see in combat situations, people either get better or they get worse. Some people just kind of cruise, right? Stay in that same zone, but some people, they get better or they get worse. They rise to the occasion or they fall. Back to the book. The good soldier, the man with high morale, has not surrendered to fear and has maintained his personal standards. The bad soldier, the man with low morale, has become incapable of independent action and has to some extent shed a part of his human individuality. That's an interesting statement. That the person that's incapable of independent action, he's saying he shed some of his human individuality. Back to the book. Basic factors of morale. We now must consider the factors. What factors constitute morale of the soldier in the heat of battle? Certain factors may be described as essential conditions without which high morale cannot exist. These 4 basic factors are: 1. Leadership. 2. Discipline. 3. Comradeship. And 4. Self-respect. A 5th factor, devotion to cause, must exist but need not necessarily influence all the soldiers. Finally, there are numerous contributory factors which are of great importance but are not essential conditions. Starting with this first one, leadership. Morale is, in the first place, based on leadership. Good morale is impossible without good leaders. Human beings are fundamentally alike in that certain common characteristics apply to all men in varying degrees. In battle, the most important of these characteristics is fear. All men are afraid at one time or another to a greater or lesser extent. In moments of fear, they band together and look for guidance. They seek for a person to give decisions. They look for a leader. The leader's power of decision results from his ability to remain calm in the crisis. His greatest asset is the ability to act normally in abnormal conditions, to continue to think rationally when his men have ceased to think, to be decisive in action when they are paralyzed by fear. A little bit of normal face from Monty. Act normally in abnormal conditions. Remain calm. Back to the book. The object of training must be first to select those who possess within them the potentialities of leadership, and secondly, to develop these potentialities. This is accomplished by giving the leader responsibility. A leader's character will develop in proportion to the responsibility with which he has been entrusted. So there you go. He's saying the same thing that we were talking about earlier. You have certain potentials, and you got to develop those. And how do you develop them? With people, you want to develop leaders, you give them responsibility. You don't give them responsibility that's going to kill them, but you give them responsibility that's going to definitely test them. And they're going to have to step up to be able to perform. Back to the book. The two vital attributes of a leader are A, decision in action, and B, calmness in crisis. Given these two attributes, he will succeed. Without them, he will fail. Our great problem in peace is to select as leaders men whose brain will remain clear when intensely frightened. So, from Monty, you got to remain calm. Now he's going to talk about discipline. The object of discipline is the conquest of fear. There are two aspects of fear. Fear can suddenly attack a man through his imagination. A corpse in a ditch or a grave by the far side of the road will remind him of his position. He will suddenly realize that he himself is liable to be killed. It is a function of discipline to fortify the mind so that it becomes reconciled to unpleasant sights and accepts them as normal everyday occurrences. Fear can also creep upon a man during periods of monotony on the line. At such a time, he will have the opportunity to appreciate the dangers which beset his life. Fear acting through his thoughts can so reduce the man's hard core of courage that he will become nervous and fearful. Discipline strengthens the mind so that it becomes impervious to the corroding influence of fear. It teaches men to confine their thought within certain definite limits. It instills the habit of self-control. That's pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing assessment to think that one of the best premier tools to overcome fear is discipline. Back to the book. Discipline implies a conception of duty. Nothing will be accomplished in the crisis by the man without a sense of duty. Makes sense. Now he's going to talk about comradeship. Back to the book. Morale can not be good unless men come to have affection for each other. A fellow feeling must grow up, which will result in a spirit of comradeship. An army is made of human beings. So that however much a leader may inspire his men, however perfect the discipline, the morale will be hard and unsympathetic if the warmth of comradeship has not been added. So yeah, you got to be the hardcore disciplinarian, but you need the warmth of comradeship. Back to the book. War, though a hard business, is not necessarily a grim one. Men must laugh and joke together, must enjoy each other's company, and must get fun out of life even in times of danger. So, do you want to have a good time? Yes, you do. And the thing that makes these dangerous times more bearable is when you're having fun during them. And that's one of the things, I don't talk a whole lot about SEAL training in here on the podcast, but one of the things that you do in SEAL training is you're doing miserable things, cold, wet, tired, and you're having fun the whole time. You're learning that, hey, guess what? I can sit here and be cold and it's miserable, or I can be cold and I can laugh about it. Yeah. And I can make fun of my friend the way he's shivering. Yeah, that's what makes it bearable. Mm-hmm. And the same thing happens when you get overseas and you joke about really dark things, dark sense of humor. That comes out real strong when you're overseas. Yeah. And one of my buddies who is super paranoid, I've talked about him on here before. The guys found a tube that had shipped like maps or something, and if you pulled the tube apart real fast, it sounded like a mortar launch. Right. So they'd get outside his tent, and he was super paranoid. We spent a little bit of time getting mortared, and so he was a little on edge from that. Yeah. So they'd go outside of his tent, and you can hear through the tent. It's just a little piece of fabric. They'd go outside of his tent and they'd pull that thing and it would sound like a mortar tube. And you'd hear him, he'd freak, what the hell are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Or, at first you'd hear him like fall and like hit the ground. And then you'd hear the giggling of the guys outside, and then you'd hear him cussing everyone out.
Yeah.
But but it was fun. It was funny.
Too far, bro.
A little too far, maybe. But everyone's having a good time. And even him, we'd get done, and he would come outside. You guys are bastards, and we'd laugh about it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing where you got to have fun in these tough situations.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's probably why, like nowadays, like contemporary companies, they incorporate Jade's company, Fragmont, they got foosball,
ping pong
things and ping
pong.
pong.
I heard massive noises the other day, tick, 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 and I was kind of sounded like
a mortar fire.
It wasn't quite mortar fire, but there was something I didn't know what it was, and they were in a Nerf gun firefight.
Yeah.
And by the way, it was sloppy. Like no one knew what they were doing.
No technique.
Yeah, there was no cover and move happening. It was just every man for himself. I was pretty disappointed.
Yeah. But that's the
but they're having
seems
fun.
like the reason, right? Where it's I mean, these are conceptually it's the same thing. Obviously, it's way different.
No, actually, it's way different, but it's not actually not.
Right,
when you're going through tough things in a business, in a company, have fun with it. And when I work with companies that are good companies, and they're going through something tough, the ones that have good morale, the ones that are laughing, they're the ones that do better.
Yeah.
Who wants to go to work?
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy the people you're working
it
with,
just sucks.
Yeah. Like why would you want to do that? One of the I hate even calling it the worst job, but I was the admiral's aide, right? So every day I'm wearing a uniform. I'm sitting at a desk all day. I did it for 13 months. It was just that part of it. It's it's just a miserable job, right? Mm. Luckily, first of all, the admiral's a great guy, and I had a lot. I joked around all the time with him, and his executive assistant is a guy that I would literally I would go 2 or 3 weeks at a time and we wouldn't say one serious thing to each other. Just everything would be some joke about all the misery that we were going through. And by misery, I just mean, hours worth of meetings and traveling all the time and being on the road and staying in crappy hotels and flights getting, bumped and canceled and being held over and the admiral's suitcase not showing up somewhere and he's supposed to go on stage. He doesn't have a uniform with him. And that's, not fun. But guess what? I had fun the whole time, and we'd be joking about, I'd say, well, I guess I'm going to take one again for the team, and we'd be just laughing. Yeah. So even in these situations that aren't fun, you got to have fun with them, and that definitely will help out your morale. And if you're in a leadership position and all you do is just get drown in the misery that you're going through, every single person that's with you is going to be going through the same thing. And so as a leader, you got to, once again, going back to the dichotomy of leadership, you gotta know when, okay, the guys are under too much stress, they're not having fun, I need to have fun. I need to start a Nerf war in the office here, so guys loosen up. And then there's times where, hey, guys are having too much fun and we gotta tighten them up. Yeah. Like, hey guys, we got this to do. And so you gotta ride that line and balance it out correctly. Yeah, it's cool how newer companies or companies nowadays are incorporating that element into the actual you're talking about. Yes, you're right. And there's companies nowadays that do it too much, and all of a sudden they can't get anything done. Yeah, they're messing around because everyone's playing ping pong, right? Everyone's in the Lego room because they got rooms now where it's like, oh, you can go in there and think and play with Legos because that relaxes your mind, I guess. Not me. When I'm around Legos, I think I'm going to step on them. It's all right because I got kids and I've stepped on Legos. It's a nightmare. So I don't like being around Legos. I got the PTSD from Lego stepping when my kids were younger. Lego PTSD. Because you can't ever get your son enough Legos apparently. No, correct. Because they just need everything. And when I was a kid, there was not that many different types of Legos. You had blocks. Right. Long ones and shorter ones, right? Yeah. Nowadays, you get Legos, but they have hands and arms and machine guns, and they got cool stuff, but they ain't Legos anymore. They're little toys. Right, but they still come with the little Legos, and they still hurt the bottom of your feet when you step on them. They are surprisingly sharp for kids. Major toys, sharp. Yeah, major sharp. All right. Going back to the book, the other thing he talked about was self-respect. No man can be said to possess high morale if the quality of self-respect is lacking. And this is something that Dick Winters talked about too, that self-respect and how that drove him. Soldiers must be encouraged to respect themselves at all times and under all conditions. Self-respect implies a determination to maintain personal standards of behavior. A man who respects himself will allow neither himself to become slovenly nor his quarters dirty. Even in action, he will take care to see that his personal appearance suffers as little as possible. It is the job of the non-commissioned officer to maintain this aspect of discipline. It is the function of the officer to encourage and instill self-respect. So, interesting, he breaks that down a little bit like I was talking about. If I'm the senior guy and I'm around yelling at people about how they're looking, that's not good. That should be my subordinate leadership should be tightening that stuff up.
Yeah.
Okay, here's his conclusion. Again, this is Monty talking. In brief, high morale has been defined as the quality which makes men endure and show courage in times of fatigue and danger. The cultivation of morale depends on the training of leaders and inculcation of discipline, the encouragement of comradeship, and the infusing of self-respect. The leaders must have a belief in their cause, and they must pay attention to numerous contributory factors of considerable but secondary importance. We live today in a scientific age, but we soldiers have to remember that the raw material in which we have to deal is men. Man is still the first weapon of war. His training is the most important consideration in fashioning of a fighting army. All modern science is directed towards his assistance, but on his efforts depends the outcome of the battle. The morale of the soldier is the most important single factor in war. So there's Monty. And that can be said for just about any organization. What your organization is made up of is people. Mm-hmm. And, you hear that with businesses all the time. Our people are our most important assets. That's generally going to be the case.